Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. I'm a little sick, but just wishing you guys a happy Valentine's and hope that you guys got all your Valentines some chocolate and flowers and something sweet, because I didn't. Yeah, and I blame you guys because Mr. Wood has been working extra hard on this lecture every night. So next time I see you guys, make sure to get some chocolate and some flowers to save his butt, okay? Just kidding. But pay attention and get 5s on the AP, okay? Happy Valentine's Day.
Alright, so for you single people out there, don't worry. High school relationships usually don't last that long anyways, okay? So it's about commitment, not just about your feelings. Here we go. We left off talking about the leading up to the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen and all these new reforms and how the revolution spirit that's going on in France, that's kind of ignited by the values and ideas of Enlightenment, have brought forth more of these changes. Okay, so what types of changes are we seeing? Well, we have the civil constitution of the clergy that comes in 1790. What basically is happening is that we're seeing the state taking control of the clergy and also the church and just the religion of French people in general. So it's becoming more secularized because it is now controlled by the state, not by any bishops or clergymen. So what did this actually do? This created a national church having 83 bishops for 83 different districts that they would break up in France, and we're going to see this trend of having the different departments or districts within France that's broken up. It's going to be a big mistake for the National Assembly because it's going to cause some division and religious conflict. It's going to be kind of a failure. And what happens is that the church property that the First Estate once owned is now confiscated by the state, and the purpose was that, not that they hate religion, is that they're trying to pay off the national debt that we talked about was, piling up because of all of the interest and all that good stuff. So you have, in addition to that, convents and monasteries that are being abolished, and you have a lot of these schools that are being closing down because, before they were run by the Jesuits, and so the state's going to figure out a way to create new schools in place of this. How are they going to be paid? Okay, the state is the one that is hiring them. They will have elections, okay? So citizens are now given the right to elect the clergymen. Also, the paychecks are coming from the state and no longer through the tithe. Okay, so even if you're not Catholic, if you're Protestant, if you're a Jew, you are legally able to, if you're a citizen, to elect the clergy. And other things that are forced upon the clergy according to the civil constitution is that they must take an oath. So the oath is saying that we solemnly swear that we will abide by all of the new government's decisions and we agree with them. And basically, they have to deny the authority of the Pope, and their allegiance is to the government. How does the Pope respond? Obviously, he doesn't like that. And so what we're seeing is that those that are part of the National Assembly that are in charge, that is creating the civil constitution of the clergy, is not saying we just want to separate religion from state. That's not their purpose. Their idea is that they want to say that religion is subordinate to the state, right? So the result, France is going to be divided over religious issues. What's going to happen is that you're going to have two types of clergies. You have the official clergy, which is acknowledged and recognized by the government, and you have the refractory clergy, which basically those that are against the government and they hold to the traditional clerical values of the Catholic Church that has always been in place for hundreds of years. And those that support the refractory clergy are those that are the king, King Louis XVI, some former nobles, and some religious peasants. Yeah, and so this is one way that the new regime, we can say, or the National Assembly is now dealing with the issue of the old regime of the First Estate. And so this is one example of how things are being turned upside down. From this point, we're going to see the king. He's going to try to flee. And in June 1791, he doesn't want to approve of this new constitution that is about to be completed. And so he's looking to get away, right? And maybe perhaps team up with the emigres that are, trying to restore the old regime back into France, having a monarchy. And so what happens, he's captured and becomes a prisoner, taken back to Paris, and the significance of this is that he is going to be now forced to accept the constitutional monarchy that is being described. Okay, so here we have the Constitution of 1791. France is going to change from the National Assembly, the National Constituent Assembly for creating the Constitution. That will end, and they're going to be called now the Legislative Assembly. There's been a lot of talk, should the governing body in France have a bicameral, which is basically two houses, like England, right? House of Lords, House of Commons. Or should it be unicameral, which is just one house? And so eventually they also are talking about, should the king have like ultimate veto or just some veto? And so they end up deciding through the Constitution of 1791, it's going to be unicameral, one house, legislative assembly, and it's going to be a constitutional monarchy. So the king has some power, and basically his power is to veto anything that the Legislative Assembly puts out, but only by suspension, meaning that he can put it off to not pass it yet, but ultimately what they want to create in terms of laws and policies, it will still go through. So it's a huge check on the power and limit on the power of the monarchy. Okay, all right. So mainly it was controlled by the middle class. Those that are elected into the Legislative Assembly are going through certain qualifications. For example, they have to be 25 years or older. They have to be able to afford a tax to pay it off to hold a position as someone that is elected. They wanted to have educated people, not just anyone. And so it's basically like this weeding out system of lower classes, and the nobility would be basically abolished from the Legislative Assembly. And the National Assembly also would divide France into 83 departments, kind of like how there's 83 districts with 83 bishops, in the same way. So France is now pretty much decentralized. I mean, they have a central government, which is the Legislative Assembly, but how they carry out everything is pretty decentralized because they split it into the 83 different departments. And so each department has elected officials that help run and carry out the national policies. And so basically there's a new system and structure, which we talked about, of how laws are made and carried out, and it's going to be uniform within all the 83 districts, except that there's a problem. Okay, the law stays the same throughout, but how they actually enforce it could be very strict or very lax, depending upon who is elected. And so, because there's kind of this inconsistency, that is going to be very troublesome, and it's not going to be carried out very well. Okay, all right, so the Legislative Assembly, we talked about left, right, and that kind of stuff. Let's talk about specifically what it looks like. So the National Assembly that came before the Legislative Assembly, remember third estate, National Assembly. Okay, now we're at the Legislative Assembly. The members of the National Assembly said that no one that was part of the National Assembly is going to take part in the new Legislative Assembly. So it's a whole new population group and new faces, and basically from these new people, you're going to have different political factions that are arising. And they're going to compete for power. Some are more radical, some are more conservative, and of course you will have your moderates. But it's very divided. And those that are most radical are saying, hey, we want to have a Republican government, meaning that no more monarch at all. And others on the conservative saying, we'll have a constitutional monarchy. That's good enough. We pretty much have reached our goal. The revolution has reached our goal. So the Fayons, they are the moderates and conservatives that basically said we are cool with the constitutional monarchy. And then, of course, you have on the more radical side, you have the Jacobins, and they are the political club that you guys have been reading about, and they are going to be taking most of the seats in the Legislative Assembly. A subgroup within the Jacobins are the Girondins, and they become even more radical in the sense that they're going to lead the country into war, which we'll talk about that. They were passionately committed to a liberal revolution. They wanted to bring as much change as possible from the old regime. And so what's going to happen is that under the Legislative Assembly, we're going to see a lot of domestic problems arise because how they want to carry out the country is going to create polarization. Okay, France is going to see a lot of problems, and it's going to come through economically and politically. Okay, so here we go. A few things I want to cover is economically. Most of the reforms that were created were basically led and established by the middle class, right? And they're the educated ones. They're the ones who are the bourgeoisie. And so basically they're favoring themselves, as most human beings would. And the lower classes are kind of getting, you know, the shaft on this, right? So in addition, they're going to create the metric system and institute that, and this is basically replacing the old sloppy system of the old regime, out with the old, in with the new. And guilds, what's once a part of French society, they're going to abolish them because they believe that they want to reform their economic system. Hearing from the ideas of Adam Smith, you basically say guilds were pretty much monopolies, and you have basically small businessmen, craftsmen that had a skill, and they basically controlled all the prices, and they don't like that, and so they want to have free business now, and so they want to get rid of the guilds. And then we have the compagnonnages. Alright, so these are trade unions, and basically a union, just like how teachers are. They are formed by certain craftsmen or skilled workers, and they basically hold to certain demands as a union. So what makes them significant is that during the time where guilds were reigning, right, these trade unions were abolished. They didn't want them around. These are formed by journeymen, whereas guilds were formed by masters. Okay. And so the journeymen are those that are basically skilled enough, but then they don't get to be part of the guilds. And so they are going on strike, and what was once banned is now legal because they are basically asking for openness of the economy, right? But later, in 1791, the La Chapouille law basically will outlaw strikes and also these trade unions. So the compagnonnages are addressing the strikes that they want to demand for wages. And so what the La Chapouille law is saying is that all trades, whether you are, you know, a certain craftsman or a merchant or something like that, they're all free to enter. There is no union that you have to have a membership. Okay, so they don't want monopolies. They're trying to maintain this new economic reform, so on and so forth. And then, of course, you guys know the assignats. Basically, it's the paper currency that comes. It's like a bond, right? So you basically buy these assignats, and what does it represent? It means that you can use that now to buy the church property that was owned by the government, taken by the government, and now sold to help the economy. So the assignats basically guarantee the value of the church property that you own. And so they're selling off the church lands, and many peasants were able to buy these lands, but it's only through middlemen because they have to buy them in big chunks, right? And so basically peasants have to band together to buy them. All right. So what's importantly is that though there were economic reforms, there are still problems that are not settled yet. So by 1792, which is going to be the takeover of the Legislative Assembly, stopping there, and then we're going to have the National Convention, what happens is that there are problems, okay? For one, when France gets into its war in 1792, it's going to intensify the dissatisfaction of those that own property, peasants and urban workers, and those that do own property, okay? And we talked about how the middle class kind of shafts the lower class. And so the peasants are complaining that there's a lack of land distribution. The workers are complaining that there's a way too high price in goods. And then the problem is that the emigrate, they took all the gold out of the country, and so all they're left with the assignat, which is basically paper money. But that will lose value. That will depreciate in value, and no one really wants to use them anymore. And so the lowest income groups will suffer the most economically. Okay, so keep that in mind, and that's going to kind of spur on that revolutionary spirit. Okay, all right. So the culture that is changing. Well, they want to transform all of the symbols, rituals, dress, and holidays of the old regime and make it new. Okay, so out with the old, in with the new. They wanted to establish a new political and social order, and through culture, they can actually see these things as symbols of breaking free of the old regime, with a new flag, with their new clothing, okay, and with some festivals. So there's new art that's involved, that's instituted. Before, art was based upon the monarch and the church, but now it's replaced with Marianne, which is this woman right here. She's carrying the French flag, and she's going all out as a revolutionary. And so this is, really an alternative to kind of the Virgin Mary, right? The Madonna that was representative of, right, all Europeans kind of represented as their faith and who they identify with. And so, like art we talked about is a reflection of the ideas that are going on and the thoughts going on at the time. And for those that are illiterate, hey, you know what? Everyone can see images and stuff. They don't need to read. And also, there's a new festival called the Festival of the Federation, which comes as a celebration of the new liberties that the French people are able to have, and it becomes the French national holiday because it represents the anniversary of the storming of the Bastille. So July 14th, 1790 is 1 year after the storming of the Bastille, and you have basically some new gear to wear, right? We wear our class spirit gear because we have class spirit, and they have revolutionary spirit. Vive la France! And they're wearing these cool red beanies with these tricolor cockades, right? You see these little pin things. All right, and they also have a new marching song that becomes the national anthem, and so it's coming because of the passionate spirit that they have in addressing the war in 1792, which I will play for you. Okay, so good, sounds great, right? All right, last slide. Here we go. So we talked about war's going to break out. Well, who's involved? Declaration of Pillnitz in 1791. War is kind of like this war is kind of the main issue that the Legislative Assembly is going to address. The Declaration of Pillnitz was issued by Prussia and Austria, and so what's happening is that these immigrants are going to Leopold II, and these are French nobles, as they fled France, right? And so they're trying to talk to Leopold, King of Austria at that time, and saying, hey, you know what? We want to restore the French monarchy, so please help us. And so Leopold, the Austrian emperor, is saying, well, Sure. Okay. If, huge if, right? If all the other great powers that want to, bring a balance of power and bring a settlement to France, if they all join me, then for sure I will, get in. So he basically didn't really. He gave a fake promise, hoping that it would just subside and no one would really join him. But what actually happened was, he would actually get the support that he actually proposed. And so it was really a bluff to kind of get rid of these immigrant outfits back. But what actually happened is that he misjudged that, how would the French revolutionaries respond? And so those that are of the Legislative Assembly, the Girondins, they said, you know what? Oh, well, let's bring it. Let's do this. Okay? And so they felt even more stronger in response to the Declaration of Pillnitz, and they didn't feel like they should back down at all. So what happens is that the Legislative Assembly declares war in April 1792, and they are now, fueled with a lot of passion of their, revolution of what's going on, and they felt that, they don't want to restore the monarchy and the old regime, and so they believed that if the revolution was happening in France, it could spread throughout Europe. And so they said, if the war was to come, right, people of the states that are fighting us, right, would not support their governments in fighting us. So, for example, let's just say, like in Austria or in the Netherlands, right, if they're fighting them, right, so there's revolutionaries in there, it's spreading, and they're not going to support their government in fighting us. And so, if we enter these countries, right, we're going to unite with these local revolutionaries, we're going to overthrow their governments, and then we're going to set up republics all over the place. Very radical, right? It's basically saying revolution will bring more revolution, and it's going to be like a chain reaction. Very ideal, very ideal. So the war, the first coalition comes, right? And so France will be defeated, and it's really because Austria and Prussia allied together, and there's really no match for them. And so they weren't devastated and wiped out, but the thing was the Eastern European monarchs are basically figuring out the partition of Poland, which we read about and we learned about, and so they have kind of this distracting issue of competition over there, and so France was pretty much not hit that hard, and then is issued the Brunswick Manifesto. Okay, this is issued by Prussia and Austria, and they threatened to destroy Paris if the royal family, Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, was harmed. How did they respond, right? Even they just, lost the war of the first coalition. The Jacobin says, you know what? We don't care. And they basically says, you don't tell us what to do. Okay? And so you have these very extreme Jacobins that become not part of the Legislative Assembly, but outside of them, who, aside of the Jacobins, are going to start a mob in Paris, and they're going to basically storm Tuileries, which is the king's palace in Paris, and they basically beat up all the Swiss guards there and kill them, and they take the king prisoner, and then they establish the Paris Commune of 1792. A lot of this revolutionary spirit and fervor and even violence was really pushed by Robespierre, Danton, and Jean-Paul Marat, which you guys have read about before, and so this is going to mark the beginning of the Second Revolution. The Paris Commune that was set up in 1792, it was led by Georges Jacques Danton, and so what the Paris Commune is that basically it's a temporary government, local government set up in Paris, and it basically overthrew the power of the Legislative Assembly for a couple of years. And what ends up happening is that they forced the Legislative Assembly to suspend the Constitution of 1791. So what was created, right, is now no more, and they wanted new elections, and they wanted to have France a republican form of government. Okay, so because of their kind of their radicalism, right? It's going to bring in the second stage of the French Revolution, which is radicalism. And one example of that is the September massacres. And so basically there are a bunch of rumors that are spreading around, and they're saying all these counter-revolutionary nobles and priests that are trying to plot, and basically people get like hysterical, they freak out, and they start killing people, and they get all crazy. So mobs are now killing priests, thousands of them. They're killing even the bourgeoisie, and anyone that is going against basically the revolution, they want to kill, and violence is running rampant throughout France. Okay, and so let's bring it back. Okay, we're closing the first age of Montesquieu, the constitutional monarchy, right, with the National Assembly, Legislative Assembly. I will give you a printout of this so you don't have to write this down. Okay, and then we're entering the age of Rousseau, which is establishing the Republic in France, but will not stand for very long, but for some years. Okay, all right. I'll see you guys tomorrow.